Black or white on the holoboard, the pieces had always looked the same to Mara Quinn. She hated that General still compared wars to games, sliding bright tokens across maps while the real pieces bled on forgotten rocks. Tonight, though, the comparison was unavoidable. The entire Terran survival effort balanced on a single move through a single aperture, as though she were flicking a knight across a grid. The aperture was real, not metaphor. Tagged Gate 0 Prime and Dominion ledgers speak. It was the keystone of the Thalassian Starlight Rail, an interwoven lattice of gravity lasers and quantum tide breakpoints that hurled starships across light years in the time it took to exhale. For 12 grinding years, the Thalassian Dominion had used that network to appear wherever Terran defenses were weakest. When Mara's escorts had asked her why this mission mattered, she'd told them the truth. We're not stealing a weapon. We're stealing a mistake. Aboard the disguised courier Clarity of Doubt, the Black Ops team floated in silent freefall. The ship smelled of cold metal, recycled ozone, and the anxious sweat of souls pretending to be freight haulers. They had spent 10 days running dark, hiding behind the gravitational tail of a drifting comet, so the Dominion Sentinels stationed at Zero Prime wouldn't notice an unscheduled visitor. "Final check," whispered Varen Leo, their Thalassian defector and quantum systems specialist. His vocal sacs fluttered when he spoke Terran Standard, a reminder that betrayal sometimes required more than courage. It also required new ways to shape breath. He held up a crystalline shard the size of a thumbnail. "Once we plug this into the command lattice, your override swarm will propagate in 30 seconds. Mara eyed the shard. It contained the patchwork of malware, false credentials, and spoofed gravitational signatures the techs on Luna had built in frantic, sleepless binges. If it worked, every rail node from here to the Dominion frontier would believe Imperial orders now flowed from the Terran flag. If it failed, the security AI named Grand Harmony would notice a foreign subroutine and slice them into microwaved ash. Sergeant Jace Alder secured the helmets on the stealth suits. "Captain, how do you want to handle the custodians?" he asked. "Quietly," Mara said. "No heroics, no fireworks. Our goal is to remain ghosts until the last packet flips green." Jace grunted. He understood. A single stray pulse of weapons fire would alert the node, and the node would, by definition, call for a fleet. They would have perhaps 4 minutes between detection and obliteration. The courier drifted closer. The outer ring of Gate 0 Prime glimmered like a fractured halo, a torus of supercool diamond lattice 1,000 kilometers wide, laced with spinning magnets that bent space-time into a rail barrel. Inside the torus, a ribbon of blue-white radiance arced and crackled. That was the rail itself, an on-demand wormhole that could be reshaped by control algorithms in the station core. The Dominion considered it an extension of their beating heart, more royal than palace walls. Mara's suit HUD projected a green line to a maintenance hatch half hidden behind shielding fins. They had chosen the least trafficked ingress after weeks of pattern analysis. Even so, a pair of droneman cyborg thralls, welded to Exocrawl, shells clung to nearby struts with plasma lances. Mara's team moved in silence, thrusters exhaling wisps. Jace fired a ribbon of counter-gravitic foam. It spread like frost, blanketing the sentry's sensor vanes. Before they could squeal an alarm, 2 spike darts punched holes between carapace plates. The drones ceased twitching, inhibitors flooded their nerve trunks, and they drifted off like broken statuary. No heroics, Mara thought. But they were already writing elegies for those poor bastards. She breached the maintenance hatch, cycled the lock, and led her 6 agents into the arterial conduits of Gate 0 Prime. The structure hummed with energies that could snuff solar systems. Coils thick as skyscrapers pulsed overhead, while cooling mist roiled around ankles. Under the alien glyphs and the glow of harmonic status lights, the place felt uncannily sacred. Even Jace, usually the first to scoff at religion, muttered a wary blessing in the conflict's tongue of his childhood. They reached the central control spindle, a chamber where transparent pylons rose like crystal organs. Data braided through them in light pulses. Suspended at the spindle's apex floated Grand Harmony's core, a dodecahedral matrix turning slowly in vacuum. Platinum-skinned custodians drifted around it, tethered to loops of fiber. They looked serene, faces painted with diffraction ink. Whispered mantras leaked through the room's thin air. "Varen, Lane 2, Mara breathed. "Distraction protocols ready." He flashed a blue glyph on his wrist pad. Across the spindle, a maintenance alarm flared, summoning 2 custodians along a false trail. The remaining watchers drifted aside, leaving a narrow column unattended. That was all the margin they would get. Mara pushed off, sailed up, and landed on a transverse beam. A gentle touch of boot magnet steadied her. She reached for the crystalline shard. "Remember," Varen cautioned in her earpiece, "the AI will test the inserted code for 14 variables: identity, syntax congruence, temporal continuity. Plug in and pray." "Got it." She slid the shard into a blooming flower of quantum wiring. A shimmer rippled outward through the pylons, as if the entire lattice had inhaled. Data threads flared sunset orange. "Data!" For half a heartbeat, nothing else changed. Then her Hiyud lit with success banners. "Othprothel, accepted, chain of command. Terran flag recognized. Master's witch. Live." Varen exhaled a wheezing laugh. "By the lakes of Andravas, it believed us." "Back door is open," Maras said. Phase 2. Phase 2 was the reason Terran admirals had poured everything into Operation Backfire. Dominion fleets were currently mustering in 4 outer provinces, preparing simultaneous raids on Terran shipyards. The fleets were already queued into the Starlight Rail, each hull tagged with coordinates of Terran strongholds. Now, with the network in their hands, Mara's team intended to edit those coordinates. Instead of punching out near Luna, Triton, and New Samarkand, the Dominion armadas would drop into orbit around their own jewel world of Thalasui without cooling time, without formation, at relativistic momentum they could not possibly arrest. It was audacious. It was monstrous. It was, by the logic of a war they were losing, necessary. Jace and 2 slicers remained in the spindle to guard Mara. The rest fanned outward to sabotage every local safeguard that might restore AI control once Harmony realized it had been tricked. She opened the lane command shell. 4 columns listed inbound transits: Prost, Fires, Flotocloxal, 17 carriers Caldroniki, 4th Exaltation Wing, 9 Dreadnought second cycle conscripts, 26 assorted second, line, charge, T6 minutes. Mara's hands hesitated above the holographic keys. The conscripts column reminded her that not every hull carried whirring killers. The Dominion subjugated minor species, drafted them at gunpoint. She pictured frightened recruits hunkered in cargo holds, told that humans were demons. "Captain," Varen murmured, "timers are ticking." "I see them." She highlighted all 4 fleets and opened the coordinate field. 1 string of numbers defined arrival, spatial location, velocity vector, gravitational kill con. She summoned a preset labeled Mercy Sunset's Someone. In Intelligence's Black Basement had named it with gallows humor. The coordinate would yank a ship out of superluminal flow just half a planetary diameter above Thalasui. Not inside the atmosphere, but close enough that the ship's own kinetic wake would scour continents. A single dreadnought, hitting at 58% C, would pack more fire than 1 billion antimatter bombs. 40-plus hulls, it would crack plates. No second guesses, Mara told herself. War demanded ends, not comfort. She pressed execute. Green confirm lights flashed. The rail network swallowed the command without question. Harmony's compliance score jumped another metric. "Target rewrite complete," she whispered. A roar echoed through the spindle. From beyond the portholes, a band of radiance widened in the torus. The first fleet was leaping, ignorant of its doom. Mara felt the mass-scale distortions in her bones, a sympathetic rattling like wind in old teeth. Here comes the Queen's own blade, turned inward, Jace said. There was awe in his voice, but also dread. Alarms screeched. Red runes cascaded across vaulted walls. The crystal pylons shifted color, now strobing violet. Harmony's panic signature. It woke up, Ren warned. Temporal discontinuity flagged. Disable reclamation protocols. I'm trying. One of the custodians, once serene, yanked free of their tether and drew a grav-sling pistol. With a wordless shriek, they fired at Mara. The pulse sizzled past, vaporized a shard of plating. Jace returned a stun burst. The custodian's body tumbled, limbs strobing with neurolock. Boarding drones en route. Someone yelled over comms. Mara snapped back to the command HUD. Harmony was already wrestling for primary. Authentication trees blinked from accepted to contested. Lines of Terran code began disappearing. The AI had discovered the graft and now ran a recursion to excise it. How long until full control reverts? 90 seconds, Varen replied, fingers darting. Maybe less. Then we're not done, she said. She dumped residual phantom orders into the rails queue, not only the 4 fleets, but every vessel registered as Thalassian Navy in the next 30 hours, a rolling storm of self-harm. If Harmony managed to revert, at least the pipeline would be clogged with contradictory directions. Her team's icon lineup dropped from 6 green to 5. A scouting pair in Corridor Gamma had been cut off. Gunfire reverberated. "Captain!" came a static, warped voice. "Too many sentries. We'll buy you." The transmission cut. Mara bit the inside of her cheek. There was no retrieving them. "Fallback route?" she asked. "Subdeck vents. Still clear," Jace said. "If we move now." "Pull out." They signaled the distant charges they'd planted on the security transponders. Explosions rippled, dimming half the chamber's lights. With the AI half crippled, every sensor blind spot became a canyon. They plunged through smoke toward maintenance tunnels. Mag boots clanking, Harmony shrieked in multiple tongues across public address channels. "Containment breach! Loyal hearts rally! Pride demands purging fire!" It flooded corridors with hunter-seeker drones. Spherical, bright, each humming with cutting lasers. Jace slung a micro-singularity grenade down a fork corridor. The miniature collapse scattered drones like tin cans flung into a furnace. Shockwaves rattled ribs. Mara led them into an exhaust conduit barely 2 meters wide. Hot air gusted across, polyfiber underlayment. Behind them, the station's internal guns hammered at random ghosts. Harmony's stabbing shadows because its eyes were smeared. "Status on the fleets?" she asked between breaths. Varen checked his wrist pad. Even while running, he could parse quantum spreadsheets. First Spear has already crossed event horizon. 2 minutes until arrival over Thalassui. The rest lockstep behind. "For good or ill, clock's ticking," she said. They exited into a logistics hangar. The courier ship Clarity of Doubt waited where it had latched, scarred but intact. Its docking clamps glowed red. The station was beginning forced isolation protocols. They powered through, slapping override chips on the seals. Metal groaned. The hatch slid open. Inside, Pilot Xiang greeted them with white-knuckled relief. "Stray rail arcs nearly bisected us," she said. "Get belted." The courier detached, thrusters pushing them into the shadow of a supercooling tower. As they cleared hull proximity, Mara saw a bright wound tear across Gate 0 Prime's torus, Harmony venting plasma in futile anger. A moment later, the massive ring flickered. Half its gravity lasers stuttered offline. "Can we rail jump out?" Jace asked. "Negative," Zhang said. "Network credibility is gone. Harmony's flagged this node as quarantined. We'd splinter." "Ballistic, then," Mara ordered. "Fast as the tank will give. We just need to outrun its local guns until we can cold fold." The courier punched engines. Behind them, defense turrets spat lances of ultraviolet. Vaporized ice crystals painted comet tails across their shield. One shot clipped the aft stabilizer. Alarms whined. But the node's bigger cannon could not align inside its own labyrinth of infrastructure, and soon, random debris fields complicated its line of sight. They cleared Zero Prime's fortress clouds and plunged into open dark, engines howling. Silence beyond the pulse of drive cores. Time enough to wonder what they'd done. Mara floated into the cockpit, suited helmet tucked under one arm. Varen sat at auxiliary, webbed hands trembling. "I betrayed my own people," he said softly. "You betrayed an empire that used your people," she corrected. He glanced at her. Sometimes that distinction feels thin. She understood. Her orders might have doomed billions, including civilians, beneath the engines of returning dreadnoughts. Was she a liberator or a butcher? History would sort tokens on its board long after her bones were ash. "Status?" she asked the pilot. "Safe distance achieved. Folding drive spooling." "Wait." On the nav pane, a spread of bright alerts bloomed. News intercepts from Thalassian comnets. The first Dominion fleet had emerged from rail far too near Thalassui's upper atmosphere. In seconds, hulls superheated, air shock ripped ion layers. The dreadnought Carnelian Crown impacted the ocean, carving a fire trench that vaporized Caldera-wide swaths. Other ships fragmented, rained plasma and exotic matter. Continental shields flared, then collapsed. The Capitol Tower, seat of Empress Kai, registered seismic spikes reading 10 on their logarithmic scale. Feed cut. A hush swallowed the cockpit. Even Xiang, hardened smuggler, wiped her eyes. Then new feeds resumed. Civilians on streets, filming twin suns where burning wreckage ignited the sky. Orbital cams showing city webs aflame, but layered through the horrors. Rebellious chants from subjugated provinces, raising banners of independence. The Dominion, for the first time in 3 centuries, saw its own cruelty mirrored back upon itself, and cracked. Jace whispered, "We forced them to face themselves." Mara wasn't sure. Maybe they had only traded one atrocity for 10. Her wrist comm pinged. Vice Admiral Harlow, on encrypted channel. "Report," came the clipped voice. "Objective achieved," Mara said numbly. "Rail network compromised. 4 target fleets resectoring. The first already struck. Casualty projections? High." A pause, then, "Understood. Terran Command extends provisional commendation. Proceed to debrief Enclave." She closed the channel. "A commendation?" She almost laughed. "What do medals mean beside a burning world?" Varen drew a trembling breath. "The network's still ours for the moment. We could send warnings to civilian lanes, open corridors for evacuations." Mara blinked. "Harmony's crippled but not dead. That might be possible if we broadcast a wide override." Jace tilted his head. "Captain, orders were clear." "Orders were about ending the war," she replied. "Mass murder won't build the peace that comes after." She turned to the pilot. "Xiang, realign transmit array. Varen, craft a civilian emergency code. Safe vector slipstreams away from Thalasway. We'll ride Harmony's confusion to push it." Chase's brow knit, but he said nothing. He'd follow her every time, and she knew it was because she gave him reasons to believe they were still human. They worked quickly. Varen typed strings of glowing glyphs, reciting invocation phrases that only a native could know. "By right of open stars, by covenant of the long wave, I declare sanctuary corridor." The rail accepted the syntax, maybe because somewhere in its battered mind, Harmony still recognized the need to preserve life. At once, the nav pane lit with new pulses. Civilian transports peeled away from the capital, lining up for the emergency corridor. Some warships, 2 crews either mutinying or seizing the chance to desert, joined the flow. A diaspora of souls, fanning into night. Mara exhaled what felt like 10 years of poison. "It's something," she murmured. "Not enough to erase what we did," Varen said. "No," she agreed. "But maybe the board isn't only black and white." On a fresh feed, they saw a sight none had expected. Dominion medical barges, orbiting to battered districts, rescue beacons shimmering. Even as parts of the culture raged, other parts responded with compassion. Perhaps the shock had cracked the empire, but fractures create openings. Light can spread there. Jace laid a hand on Mara's shoulder. "Captain, the drive's ready." "Punch it." The courier unfolded space, slipped into geometries where distance lost meaning. Stars smeared into threads. The ship hummed like a hive of ghostly bees, the sound of reality protesting. In the quiet cabin, Mara closed her eyes. She remembered the holoboard, the neat grid, tokens standing ready. Generals loved simple shapes because they implied mastery, but the universe was more like glass shattered on the floor. Sharp, complex, impossible to arrange without drawing blood. She pictured the Thalassian survivors fleeing through a corridor her team had opened, refugees who yesterday would have called her species monstrous. She pictured Terran children who might now grow up without another raid blotting out their skies. She pictured the silent graves of the operatives lost in corridors Gamma and Delta. The rail network was broken, but not beyond repair. Maybe one day, platforms once designed for conquest could be repurposed for exchange. Food, art, stories. Those lines of force could become lines of fellowship. If so, history would still remember Gate Zero Prime as a place where horror bloomed first, and then a fragile hope. She didn't know. She was tired, so tired, and the cost of victory felt like iron lodged behind her sternum. Yet the courier carried them forward, and forward was the only direction time allowed. Mara opened her eyes to the blurred starlight, thinking, "Let the pieces fall. We'll build something new from what's left behind them." Over the wounded planet, red dawn merged with the glow of burning ships. Somewhere, amid smoke and fractured marble, a child might look up, see fire in the heavens, and wonder if perhaps the gods were not angry, but simply changing their minds. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it might be the first unsteady step.